Every wild animal on Earth seems to follow the same unwritten rule: stay as far away from humans as possible. And they have more than enough reasons to fear us. Human beings have become the most dangerous species this planet has ever produced. We hunt animals, trap them, and erase their natural habitats to make space for our own homes. Yet, despite all of this, strange encounters happen every year that seem to challenge the basic laws of nature. Wild animals swim directly toward people and willingly come closer, almost as if they are asking us for help. In December 2005, a diver named James Mosquito received an emergency call near California's Farallon Islands. A massive humpback whale had become trapped in dozens of heavy crab fishing lines. When the rescue team arrived, they were met with a heartbreaking sight. More than 20 ropes were wrapped tightly around the whale's enormous body. Hundreds of pounds of fishing equipment hung beneath her like an anchor, slowly dragging her toward the ocean floor. She could barely reach the surface to take another breath. One of her fins was bound so tightly that the rope had already begun slicing through her skin. For more than an hour, the divers worked beneath an animal the size of a school bus, cutting through one line after another with small curved knives. But the whale's behavior was the most astonishing part of the entire rescue. Throughout the operation, she remained almost completely still. A single powerful swing of her tail could have killed any of the divers instantly, but she never made one threatening movement and simply waited. When the final rope slipped from her body and disappeared into the darkness below, something happened that no one expected. The freed whale did not swim away. Instead, she turned around and slowly came back toward the rescue team. She approached each diver individually and gently touched them with her nose. Only then did she head toward the open ocean and vanish into the endless blue water. Was this her way of thanking them? Did she truly understand that these unfamiliar creatures had just saved her life? No one can answer those questions with certainty, but this was far from an isolated incident. For years, divers near Hawaii have witnessed equally mysterious behavior from giant manta rays. Some arrive with fishing hooks buried inside their gills or strong lines tangled tightly around their enormous wings. Instead of fleeing in terror, the injured mantas slow down and remain close to the divers. Sometimes they hover directly in front of a person before rolling onto their backs, something they rarely do in the wild. It almost looks as though they are deliberately exposing their injuries and waiting motionless, making their silent request for help nearly impossible to ignore. Dolphins have also been observed displaying remarkably similar behavior. There are numerous documented cases of dolphins trapped in fishing lines, deliberately approaching boats, swimmers, and diving teams. During one encounter off the coast of Florida, a wild dolphin swam directly toward a group of divers and remained almost perfectly still near the surface. One of the divers eventually noticed a fishing line wrapped tightly around the animal's fin. The dolphin stayed close long enough for the diver to carefully remove the line and set it free. What makes this mystery even more fascinating is that such behavior does not exist only beneath the ocean's surface. In several regions of Kenya and Zimbabwe, park rangers have reported injured wild elephants slowly approaching their vehicles. Many of these elephants were suffering from deep wounds caused by hunters' traps and snares. Instead of retreating into the wilderness, the animals moved toward the rangers and sometimes stopped only a few yards away from their trucks. Wild elephants almost never behave this way around ordinary vehicles. In several particularly unusual cases, the same elephants had been treated by wildlife teams years earlier, when they were still injured calves. After reaching adulthood, they returned to the same kind of vehicle they appeared to associate with safety. But the story becomes even stranger when animals are facing an immediate threat. In 2010, a fisherman in New Zealand watched a young fur seal leap directly onto his boat while a group of killer whales chased it through the water. The terrified animal did not attempt to reach the distant shore. It did not search for shelter among the nearby rocks. Instead, it rushed toward the only place the killer whales could not easily follow. This was not an isolated act of panic. For years, marine researchers have recorded seals and sea lions using boats, docks, and even surfers as temporary moving shelters during a hunt. These animals are not necessarily asking people to fight their predators for them. They may simply be using humans and our surroundings as another useful part of the landscape. Still, this raises one deeply fascinating question. Do these wild animals actually understand that human beings might be able to help them? If the answer is yes, the implications would be extraordinary. It would mean that a wild creature is consciously choosing, even if only for a few minutes, to trust the most dangerous species on Earth. For decades, most scientists rejected this emotional interpretation. The explanation they generally accepted was far less romantic. An animal does not need to understand our intentions in order to approach us. It may only need to recognize patterns and identify a possible path to survival. A whale trapped for hours and slowly running out of air may eventually reach a point where fear no longer matters. When death is closing in, anything offering even the smallest possibility of relief can become a reasonable gamble, including a human being. The young fur seal was probably not thinking about human kindness either. It was making a much simpler calculation, one shaped by millions of years of survival. Almost anything is better than being caught by a killer whale. Marine mammals, however, add another important piece to this strange puzzle. Whales, dolphins, and seals evolved in an environment completely different from our own. Their perception of danger does not operate in exactly the same way as it does for a deer, an antelope, or most land animals. To them, the sight of a boat or a diver does not always trigger an immediate instinct to escape. Then there is the question of intelligence. Humpback whales, dolphins, and elephants belong to a small group of animals capable of remembering individual faces and voices for many years. They build complicated social relationships, maintain strong emotional bonds, and sometimes display behavior that appears remarkably close to empathy. Some of these species can even recognize themselves in a mirror, an ability once believed to belong almost exclusively to humans. Certain researchers believe this extraordinary mental capacity may allow these animals to apply lessons from one positive experience to a completely different situation. An elephant treated by humans when it was young might retain one simple but powerful memory. Vehicles like this did not hurt me. That does not mean the elephant understands human kindness in the same way we do. It may simply be recognizing a familiar pattern with the help of an exceptionally sophisticated brain. But this is exactly where scientists become cautious and where the story begins to lose some of its magic. Human beings are incredibly skilled at seeing emotions, intentions, and meaning where none may actually exist. A manta ray approaching a diver could simply be reacting to the movement and sound of the diver's bubbles. A whale returning after being freed might not be expressing gratitude at all. It could merely be confused, exhausted, or temporarily disoriented after spending hours trapped underwater. Many animal rescue stories that spread across the internet eventually turn out to be far more ambiguous than they first appeared. Behind these inspiring encounters is also a much darker and more uncomfortable reality. For every documented animal that approached a person and survived, thousands of others died alone and unseen. Countless animals become tangled in abandoned fishing nets, wounded by hidden traps, or chased by predators without ever moving toward a human being. Most of them continue to fear us until their final moments. These remarkable stories are not the normal pattern of life in the wild. They are rare exceptions created when desperation, fear, memory, and extraordinary intelligence briefly align. Perhaps that rarity is exactly what makes these encounters so fascinating. The animals most often associated with this behavior seem to share several important characteristics. They live for many years, possess powerful memories, and develop deep social relationships with others of their kind. They also appear to experience the world through a rich and complicated inner life. Elephants, whales, dolphins, and even seals have all been observed mourning their dead. They protect wounded members of their groups and sometimes remain beside a dead companion for hours or even days. Perhaps this shared emotional complexity is the real pattern hidden beneath all of these extraordinary encounters. Perhaps these animals do not fully understand that human beings are capable of helping them. Instead, they may possess minds complex enough to extend trust beyond the boundaries of their own species when circumstances become truly desperate. That ability is extraordinarily rare in the natural world. Trust is not the default condition of a wild animal. Suspicion, caution, and fear are the ancient instincts that allowed countless generations to survive. Every animal alive today descended from creatures that knew when to run, hide, or fight. That is why ignoring those instincts, even for only a few minutes, becomes such a remarkable decision. We still cannot know what was happening inside the mind of that humpback whale while fishing lines pulled her beneath the surface. We do not know whether she understood that the divers were cutting her free. We cannot say with certainty whether her return was an expression of gratitude, simple curiosity, or nothing more than confusion after a terrifying ordeal. We also do not know whether a manta ray remaining motionless in front of a diver is making a conscious choice. The animal may be asking for help in the only way it knows how. It may also be responding automatically to movement, pressure, sound, or instinct. The truth remains hidden inside minds that are intelligent, emotional, and still deeply unfamiliar to us. But one fact is impossible to ignore. Somewhere on Earth, animals with every evolutionary reason to fear humans occasionally choose not to run from us. They approach our boats, wait beside our vehicles, and allow our hands close to the most vulnerable parts of their bodies. For a few fragile moments, fear gives way to something that looks remarkably like trust. Perhaps these encounters reveal less about animal intelligence than we initially believe. Maybe they reveal something far more profound about the nature of trust itself. Trust does not always appear where safety is guaranteed. Sometimes it emerges only when every safe option has already disappeared. Choosing to rely on something dangerous, even once and even for a few minutes, may be one of the strangest and bravest decisions found anywhere in nature. It is a gamble made without promises, shared language, or any certainty that the other creature will respond with mercy. And every time it happens, the moment unfolds between two beings that could easily harm or destroy one another. Yet for one brief and extraordinary instant, both sides choose not to be afraid.